Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is a privilege and honor, as it is every day, to welcome you here to my show. Now, on this show, we like to talk about all of our favorite things in the worlds of movies and television, and we do this show live, normally, every day at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Today, we are doing the show, obviously, at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. There are a couple of reasons why today's show is going up at 10. Reason number one, I wanted the Thor Ragnarok review embargo to be lifted, and that lifted at 9 a.m., and I was launching my Thor Ragnarok review at 9 a.m., so I didn't want to launch that review and do the show at the same time. The other reason is, one of the reasons I'm wearing the hat and I'm having the shade come over my eyes, I was up till 4 in the morning last night because I had a screening last night on the other side of town, and then me and Kaori, we get together and watch Riverdale, and we do a review for that. Then I had to wait till that was done, which was about midnight. Then I recorded my Thor Ragnarok review, and then I got all the things together for this show. I didn't get to sleep till about 4 o'clock in the morning, so I was not going to be ready for an 8 o'clock show, but mostly it's because of Thor Ragnarok. And listen, guys, I'm super happy that you're joining me here today. We're going to talk Thor Ragnarok. We're going to talk about that other movie, The Snowman, with Michael Fassbender. We got a few other topics, and here's how today's going to go. Going to talk about Thor and the Snowman, and then I'm going to go over and take some of your questions that you guys email into me. Now, how do you email a subject or a topic or a question to me? It's simple. Just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Send that in to me. Let me know what you guys are thinking about and talking about, and maybe you'll see your question pop up here on the show. Now, it's an important thing here. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line. That's pretty important. And the other important thing here is make sure when you send in your question or topic, keep it to 90 words or less, or else I literally can't fit it on the screen. Now, after I get done with the email questions, I'm going to go to the people watching live and take some live questions from you guys. If you're watching live, how do you get a question on? Near the end of the show, start tweeting in some questions to @JohnCampea on Twitter, and maybe you will see your tweet pop up on the bottom of the screen. So, with all of that out of the way, it's time for us to get into it. We're going to not waste any time. We're going to jump right into Thor Ragnarok. The review embargo has now lifted. I can tell you I have now seen the movie twice. I'm going to see it for a third time. I believe tomorrow I'm going to go watch it again. Thor Ragnarok, look, you guys have seen and heard all the comments and the tweets that all the critics are putting out. The review embargo has lifted. As of right now, Thor Ragnarok is holding a 100% of Rotten Tomatoes. Now, that's with about 30 reviews have come in. And that's not saying that it's a perfect movie. That's just saying that everybody who has seen it has liked the movie. That's what the Rotten Tomatoes, the Rotten Tomatoes is not saying 100%. That means Thor Ragnarok is the perfect film. No, what it means is that everybody, without exception so far, who has seen the movie has given it a positive review. Everybody is saying this is a good movie, and it is a good movie. And I've talked a little bit about this before, and I put my review up, by the way, guys. Watch my review. I've got it up online here. It's very concise. But this is a ridiculously entertaining movie that is loaded with some of the best humor we've seen in the MCU so far, and a lot of great stuff. But here's the key thing. The key thing is this, is that Thor Ragnarok is not just a laugh fest. The director Taika Waititi, and this is the main point I make in my review, Taika Waititi found a way to make an incredibly entertaining and humorous and fun movie while at the same time having the biggest stakes, the biggest consequences, the most darkness that we've ever seen in an MCU movie, all at the same time. And I know the trailers don't highlight that. The trailers just highlight the fun and the humor, and it's loaded with fun and humor. You will be thoroughly entertained when you come out of that movie. But it's almost like they very sneakily slid in on stuff. Guess what? The darkest of consequences, the darkest of stakes in this movie than there have ever been in any other MCU movie. And therein lies the genius and the brilliance of Thor Ragnarok. The fact that it didn't just do humor, it did humor and the darkness all at the same time and made them one complete entertaining package. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. Every single person, I mean, without exception, every single person I have talked to that has seen the movie has really enjoyed the film. Therefore, I think the vast majority of you are really going to enjoy it. It's not my number one comic book movie of the year. To me, And if you had told me this coming into this year that, hey, John, your favorite comic book movie of the year won't be a Marvel film and it won't be a DC film, it'll be a Fox film. And that's what it is. Logan is still my number one comic book movie of the year. But Thor Ragnarok fits very comfortably in that either number 2 or number 3 spot. I haven't fully decided yet. It's not a perfect movie. I've got some minor quibbles with it. I talk about those quibbles in my review, so go check that out there. But overall, Thor is a triumph. And this is the other thing I mentioned about Thor, is that I had my doubts. When they announced Taika Waititi as the director, I was thrilled that they hired him as the director, but I had my doubts that, Marvel would actually let Thor Ragnarok, an MCU film, be a legitimate Taika Waititi movie. This is a legitimate Taika Waititi movie. If you appreciate What We Do in the Shadows, I think you're going to love Thor Ragnarok. If you don't appreciate What We Do in the Shadows, I think you're a little bit insane, but all film is subjective. That's totally fine. Then I don't know if you're going to like Thor Ragnarok. If you really don't like What We Do in the Shadows, and I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that doesn't like What We Do in the Shadows. At any rate, I think you're going to be thoroughly entertained. It's a winner of a film. I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot of questions. If you want to ask some more questions about Thor Ragnarok, feel free to fire them in near the end of the show. Fire them in on Twitter, and maybe we'll get to a couple of those at the end of the show. Okay, now, Thor Ragnarok. Triumph. The Snowman, which I got to tell you, I have been so excited about The Snowman. It reminds me a lot of these early 90s, late 80s, like murder mystery thrillers. It just felt right. It seemed to have all the right elements. You got Michael Fassbender in there playing the lead character, who is, one of our generation's great performers. There was so much to look forward to in this movie. I started hearing some not so good things about it in the past week or so, but I decided to kind of press most of those out of my mind. And then I went to go watch last night. I went to go see The Snowman. It's an awful film. It's an awful, awful movie. And here's the intriguing thing about it. Sometimes movies are awful because they do so much bad stuff in them. There's not a lot of terribly offensive bad stuff in The Snowman. The biggest problem with The Snowman that I see is that there's nothing good in it. It's just boring and drudging, and you feel like you're laboring just to get through this movie. And they do a couple of really stupid things, but I've had a couple of people who I guess it's a novel and I guess it's a book, who apparently have read the book, say to me, John, you have to read the original source material to really appreciate it. Well, I've always said this. If you have to read the original source material in order to fully get the movie, then you failed as filmmakers. If you can't just take the movie for the movie and fully appreciate it, then that's on you as the filmmakers. That's your failure as the filmmakers. I believe that with anything, whether it's comic book source material, novel source material, original TV series source material, if you have to go back and watch the original source material in order to get the new movie, that's your fault. It's not the audience's fault. That's your fault. And I'm going to tell you this, and I'm thinking about making I'm thinking about making a video about this. I am starting to second guess Michael Fassbender. Now, before you go jumping all over me, of course he is a ridiculously talented actor. His acting talent is not what's in question here. But because he's a good actor, whenever a movie got announced that Michael Fassbender was in, I would get excited. What was it? Light Between Oceans? It's got Michael Fassbender. I'm excited. Assassin's Creed? It's got Michael Fassbender. I'm excited. The Snowman? It's got Michael Fassbender. I'm excited. So that would happen. But I'm honestly now, I think I'm to the point where if I see Michael Fassbender's in a movie, I'm probably not going to be excited for the movie. Not because Michael Fassbender isn't a good actor. You'd have to be blind not to see that he's a great actor. But because I don't think he has any judgment. Like the movies that Michael Fassbender or his representatives, and he should be firing his reps, the people making these decisions for him, but I'm starting to feel like Michael Fassbender has terrible judgment. And his reps must have terrible judgment because he's constantly appearing in this. Honestly, though, I can't remember the last time Michael Fassbender appeared in the movie that didn't have an X in it that was really good. I think you have to go all the way back to Shame. That was directed by Steve McQueen. That movie's amazing. But I feel like you have to go all the way back to Shame to find that. And maybe there was a great movie that I'm just forgetting about off the top of my head, but I'm really starting to question Michael Fassbender's decision-making process to the point now that the next time I see a movie that he's starring in, I'm going to wonder if I'm even looking forward to it. Not because Michael Fassbender can't act. He's a great actor. but because he usually picks, I mean, lately, last 5, 6, 7 years, he's picking terrible movies to be involved with. So, I don't know. The Snowman, massive disappointment. I do not recommend you check it out. I really don't. Right now, it's got like a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I am actually beside myself. What 20% of people thought this was good? Like, anyway, all film is subjective, though, so that's cool. But man, I just don't see how anybody's going to like this movie. It's just really dry. Honestly, I kind of feel like they shouldn't have even released it. I feel like they might have gotten better response if they just put this out on home video or put it direct to Netflix or something like that, but it shouldn't be in theaters. Anyway, okay, guys, with that stuff out of the way, I'm now going to go to the main part of the show, which is taking your topics and questions that you guys have emailed into me. And we're going to start off with this. The first question I'm going to take today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Justin Lee, who writes, so we've discussed the high probability that The Last Jedi trailer contains a lot of misdirection. Let's assume this is true. Does that cross the false advertising line? Would you consider it false marketing if they purposefully tease certain storylines, the Kylo Ren and Rey scene or the Leia and Kylo scene, that are ultimately not in the film? Thanks a lot for the question, man. You know what? That is a great question. I've never really considered that before. Now, let me tell you what my position has been before this Star Wars trailer came out. I have honestly never minded misdirection in trailer because I don't, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm wrong. Up till this point, I have never really considered misdirection as false advertising. Like false advertising, which is just blatantly trying to sell something to the audience that is just not true or just not there. For example, Mission Impossible 2. When you watch the trailers for Mission Impossible 2, Anthony Hopkins is still a hot name in acting, but at the time he was particularly a hot act. He was a great name. If you put Anthony Hopkins in your movie, that's awesome. The trailers for Mission Impossible 2 made it look like Anthony Hopkins was in the movie every bit as much as Tom Cruise was. I mean, half of that trailer had Anthony Hopkins starring Tom Cruise and Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins is in like 5 minutes of the movie and gone. So that's an example of the studio was selling us, hey, come and watch Anthony Hopkins, when really you're not giving us any Anthony Hopkins. Like, that's one thing. The Disney film Bridge to Terabithia, this movie is kind of my poster child for misleading marketing. Because they didn't just give you misdirect, they completely deceive you as the audience to entirely the even kind of movie that you were getting. Because the marketing for Bridge to Terabithia made you as an audience member, oh, this is a fun family adventure movie. Much in the veins of a Peter Pan or Chronicles of Narnia. This is going to be a fun family adventure movie. And that is not what the Bridge to Terabithia is at all. It's sad and tragic and deals with death and a child dying and other children dealing with the pain of it. I mean, it's completely a different movie. See, when you get a trailer like Star Wars The Force Awakens trailer that has some misdirect, I feel like the type of movie they're presenting us is the type of movie we're getting. I feel like the characters they're showing us are the characters we're getting. I feel like the kind of action and adventure that we're getting, that's what we're going to get. They may be fudging on the narrative and what's the narrative, but I never felt watching the Last Jedi trailer as if they were deceiving me as to the type of movie we were getting. I believe we know what type of movie we're getting. I never feel like they were, if so suddenly they had a bunch of Harrison Ford in the trailer and make us believe, oh my God, Harrison Ford is back for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Harrison Ford's back. That would be deceptive and that would be misleading. But like I said, up until The Last Jedi trailer, I should point this way. Up until The Last Jedi trailer, I've never felt that misdirection was the same thing as misleading. Misleading to me, I say, for when you don't have what the audience wants. So you package it to pretend like your movie is what the audience wants and then disappoint them when they come into the movie theater. So to me, that's the way I've looked at that, but maybe you guys look at it a different way. Jump into the comment section and let me know what you guys think about that. All right, we're moving on now to the next topic. And the next topic today is sent in to us from Glenn Myron, who writes, you are constantly saying you don't care who stars in a given role or who directs a film, as long as they are competent. Yet you have also talked about how an actor needs to be the right fit for the role. So which is it? Any competent actor in a part, or an actor who fits the role or the narrative? You can't have it both ways. I think fit is paramount, as Ben Affleck would be terrible as Pee-wee Herman, as an example. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Glenn. And I've had a couple of people write to me recently about this whole thing, because you guys know me. I don't like taking questions about, hey, John, do you think this actor would be good in this role? My answer is always the same. Sure, if that actor is a good actor, sure, he could be good in that role. John, do you think this director should direct this movie? Well, as long as he's a good director, sure, he could do a good job on that. Now, here's the thing. Let me just pull the question up again just to make sure I get the name right. I think it was Glenn. Yes, Glenn. Glenn is saying you can't have it both ways. It's either as long as somebody's talented or it's get the right fit. No, you're wrong. You are dead wrong. It is both. And here's why. Here's the big thing. And I have explained this before, but let me bring it up here again. You say that Ben Affleck wouldn't make a good Pee-wee Herman. You don't know that. Here's why. Here's why you don't know that. You don't know that because if they said they were doing a Pee-wee Herman movie and they cast Ben Affleck, you have no idea right now what kind of Pee-wee Herman they're making in their movie. You just don't know. For all you know, that movie's Pee-wee Herman incarnation could be a bigger, broodier guy with a Boston accent. And if that's the case in the script, then Ben Affleck is the perfect guy to play it. The point is, you don't know what kind of that version of a character that movie is going for. Let's look back again to Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Everybody lost their minds as if the sky was falling when they announced that Heath Ledger, that Brokeback Mountain guy, when Heath Ledger was announced as the Joker. I contend, and I remember saying this, writing this in one of my, on a website after I saw the movie. Once everybody saw what kind of Joker that Christopher Nolan was going for, you realized, oh yeah, Heath Ledger's perfect for that. You see, the problem here is people hear Joker and they have their own idea of what Joker is going to be, when in reality, the filmmaker has his own idea about what the Joker is going to be. And he's going to go out and get somebody that he thinks fits that Joker. As an audience member, you don't know what kind of Joker that is. I mean, we hear remember when they cast Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? Everybody lost their minds. The Broadway performer is Logan. That's stupid. Logan's supposed to be 5'3", not 6 something. Well, okay, yeah, but at the time, we didn't know what kind of Wolverine that Bryan Singer was going to be trying to develop. And maybe if we had known, which we never do, maybe if we had known, we would have gone, oh yeah, okay, that Hugh Jackman guy could pull that off. Look, the point is this. Whenever they announce a movie, whenever they announce a character, or whenever they announce a new film or a project or stuff like that, we really don't know anything about it. We don't know what kind of incarnation of that character it's going to be. So all we can do as an audience who have zero idea what kind of character they're putting together, all we can do as an audience that we can say definitively is, well, okay, well, as long as they get a really talented actor, then I'm okay with it. Then I'll trust that the producers and the director will make the fit right. Sometimes they do get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong. But all we can do is trust the filmmakers that they'll worry about the fit, because only they know which actor will fit the role. We can't know until after we see the movie. After we as an audience see the movie, we can make a commentary as to whether we thought that actor fit the role or not. Sure. But what we can do before seeing a movie is say, do we like who they got on the basis of talent? And if they got somebody good on the basis of talent, then I'll leave the question of fit to the filmmakers until after I see the movie. That's all we can do. So yes, you do get to have it both ways. It is about fit and it is about talent. It's about both. It's just that we as audience members, we can't give any commentary as to whether or not we think it's a fit until after we see the movie. We can give commentary if we think it's a fit according to what's in our heads, but what's in our heads is not what the filmmakers are doing. So yes, I do believe before we can see the movie, the best thing we as an audience can do is go, would this actor be good in this role? Well, the only question we can really ask, well, is that actor a talented actor? If the answer is yes, then yes, they could be great in that role. And we'll leave the question of fit up to the filmmaker, and then we can talk about fit after we see the movie. But before we see the movie, there's no point. And that's why I tend to stay away from questions of, John, who do you think should direct this movie? Well, any one of 100 good directors could direct it, and I'll be happy. John, who do you think should star in this role? I go, well, as long as it's a talented actor, I'll trust the filmmakers until I have a chance to see the movie for myself. That's really why it comes down to that. So no, it is not a contradiction. The two things do work hand in hand. So anyway, that's the way I see it. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Eddie Garcia, who writes, hey, John, hope you're having a very ghoulishly awesome Friday the 13th today. Clearly, he wrote this email in a few days ago, or at least maybe sent it again. My question is, have you heard of when the new Friday the 13th film is going to see theaters? They have missed a perfect opportunity today for having its release. Thanks for your show. Okay, so as some of you may or may not have heard, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Paramount, I believe it was Paramount, got their rights back to Friday the 13th. And they planned and announced a reboot of Friday the 13th launching on Friday the 13th, 2017. Well, 2017 Friday the 13th has come and gone. Why did they miss that release date? The reason they missed the release date is this. Back in February, they canceled the film. They actually canceled the movie. They made the announcement, Paramount made the announcement that they were scrapping their plans for the Friday the 13th film. And you know what? To be honest, I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. I think someday we will get another crack at Friday the 13th, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years, maybe in 10 years. I'm not sure. I think someday we'll get another crack at a Friday the 13th movie, but it was probably the right move. I mean, they were just coming off, the industry was just coming off a really poor performance of Rings, that relaunch of that. That didn't do very well. I think they had like a $13 million opening weekend, and that probably scared off Paramount about this type of a film, and they went ahead and pulled the plug. And look, I think the last Friday the 13th movie we got with, was it Jensen Ackles? No, it's Jared Padalecki. The guy from Supernatural was in it. And I think that was like 2009. Also, a friend of mine named America Olivo was in that movie as well. She's the first girl who gets killed in the movie, this friend of mine. But anyway, that came out in 2009, and I don't think it did very well. So I think they took a step back, realized, hey, we announced this Friday the 13th movie. There wasn't a lot of excitement about our announcement. This other horror franchise we put out didn't do very well. The last Friday the 13th movie we didn't do so well. It's completely understandable that at that point, the execs of Paramount took a step back and said, let's take a breath. Do we really want to do this? Is this really the right move? Are we actually going to make money on this, or are we going to lose money on this? And that ultimately is always the most important question for a studio. Are we going to make money on this, or are we going to lose money on this? And they decided, you know what, we're probably going to lose money on this. So they pulled the plug, and the plug has been pulled. So that is what happened to that, to the Friday the 13th project. All right, guys, those are all the email questions I'm taking today. Now I'm going to go to the live questions that you guys are sending in to me. Start firing in those questions. Tweet to me at John Campea. Send them in. Now, before I get to those, though, I want to take this opportunity to take my little commercial break for my daily shameless plug for my Patreon page. Now, as you guys know, I no longer work for a corporation. I decided to leave the corporations and not work for them anymore. I decided to do all my channel on my own. And that means I can only do it with the support of my Patreon supporters. Do me a favor. If you're somebody who likes my content and you enjoy watching the show every day or listening to it every day, go on over to patreon.com/John Campea. You're going to get a bunch of information there about my story, about why I decided to do a Patreon page, why I left the corporate overlords, and how being a Patreon supporter actually makes these shows possible, and all the benefits of being a Patreon supporter. For example, audio-only version, so you can listen in your car or at the gym of the John Campea Show and Star Wars Talk Tuesdays are available to my Patreon supporters, and some other benefits as well. Check it out. And if you decide to become one of my Patreon supporters, eternal gratitude. Thank you for making this show possible. And if not, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy you're here being a part of the conversation. Okay, guys, with that out of the way, now let's head on over to Twitter. I'm going to pop open my Twitter sphere here and pull up a question. Here we go. Remember, guys, I don't have a chance to screen these, so let's see what we got. First Twitter question I'm taking today comes to us from Star-Lord Jack. You guys have some of the most creative Twitter handles. And Star-Lord Jack writes, Thoughts on the rumors that Venom will be based on the Lethal Protector comic? I have heard that rumor, but I have also not heard that from anything even remotely reliable. I think that just got made up in a chat board somewhere. So honestly, I don't give that any credence. I mean, anything's possible. You always hear me say anything is possible. Don't bet the farm against it. But I don't think there's enough reliable information to actually take that seriously at this point. Who knows? I mean, let's wait and see. If they do, that's an intriguing storyline to go with. But as of right now, I'm not hearing anything reliable that suggests that. Okay, let's try this one. Noarco writes, John, without spoilers, was Doctor Strange in more or less of Ragnarok than you thought he would be? Doctor Strange was in exactly the amount that I thought he would be in the movie. That's all I'll say. I'll say Doctor Strange was in the exact amount of the movie that I thought he would be. Okay, let's try the next one. Next comes to us from R.D. Writer, who writes, John, what would your ideal Star Wars cameo be? As an alien? Or my cameo be as an alien, a trooper, or yourself? Well, ideally, I mean, everybody would want to be themselves, for sure. Other than that, I think it would be cool to be an alien. I remember George Lucas's daughter did a cameo in, which one was it? I can't remember if it was The Force or Attack of the Clones. You know, I think it was Attack of the Clones. Yes, it was Attack of the Clones. So George Lucas's daughter does a cameo in Attack of the Clones, and she got to dress up as an alien. I thought that was cool. So that would probably be my ideal cameo. All right, next one comes to us from Holmes or Simpson. Holmes or Simpson writes, John, do you find the Marvel origin movie trope of the hero fighting an evil version of themselves annoying? Black Panther is doing it. Well, to be honest with you, I think there was a time that I did. I think there was a time that I kind of had a little bit of a problem with that. But to be honest, the more I had it, I remember I had this debate with somebody of mine. This is back when I was still kind of annoyed by it. And I had this debate with somebody about it, and they kind of changed my mind on it. Yeah, believe it or not, people change my mind. Actually, my people change my mind more often than you think. But this person kind of changed my mind off it in the sense of this. Understand Black Panther. Understand his environment. Understand his circumstances. So understanding all of that, what would be the most logical adversary for Black Panther in an origin type of setting? Somebody making the claim to the same throne. I mean, that just makes sense. That makes logical sense. Look at Ant-Man. Because remember, I think when I reviewed Ant-Man, I said that was one of my problems with Ant-Man. It's like, somebody's got kind of similar powers. Why do you do that? But really, it makes the most sense, especially in an origin story scenario. Because Ant-Man exists within a certain context. Therefore, it stands to reason that anybody during his origin story who would be a nemesis to him would also be in that certain context. And therefore, it kind of makes sense. Go back to the first Iron Man movie. I didn't think Warmonger was all that great of a character, and I think they misused Jeff Bridges in that movie, but still, Tony Stark in his origin movie is in a certain scenario. He's in a certain context. It would only make sense that anybody who would be his nemesis right there, right then, during his origin, would also be in that certain context. And therefore, it makes sense. So, yeah. I mean, honestly, it used to bother me, but now it kind of makes sense to me. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that... Oh, and Thor did the same thing with Loki, because Thor's circumstances was he's of Asgard. He grew up with Loki. It stands to reason that his nemesis would be somebody that was in his same circumstance. I'm not saying if I was doing a Marvel origin story, I would make sure that the villain came from a similar background and had similar power set as the hero. I'm not saying I would do that, but I've come to the point that I now understand why they do that. And from a logical point of view, it does make sense. And once the person I was debating with put it that way to me, I went, you know what? You're right. You're right. That does make sense, and it makes it more logical. So, no, honestly, it doesn't bother me at all. Not anymore, at any rate. All right, let's go to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Last Journey, who writes, John, how faithful do you think Flashpoint will be to the source material? Like, are we going to see a gunslinging Jeffrey D. Morgan Batman? No, you're not going to see a truly faithful to... Even the animated movie was not all that faithful to it. Look, none of these movies are ever completely faithful to the source material, nor should they be. Because that source material was made for a different medium. Maybe the way the source material did it on the printed page worked best for the printed page, but just because something works best for the printed page doesn't mean that's how it's going to work best on a big screen. You got to adapt. That's why, like, one of the best comic book movies of the last number of years, X-Men Days of Future Past. Sure, it's based on X-Men Days of Future Past, the comic book, but took a hell of a lot of liberties. So did Winter Soldier. So does Batman vs. Superman. All these movies, even the best of comic book movies, take a lot of liberty with the source material. I have no doubt that Flashpoint is going to be the theme of Flashpoint, but I have no doubt they're going to do a lot of adaptation, and so they should. So anyway, okay, next question. The next question comes to us from Jose HJR17, who writes, John, thoughts on the rumors Fox will beat Marvel to the punch and use the Skrulls and Dark Phoenix before Captain America? Again, I'm not hearing that from anybody reliable. at this point, so I really can't comment on it. All right, next one comes to us from Kenneth Colton, who writes, Hey, John, why would a large film like Justice League start selling tickets only 18 days before the film's release? Why not? I said this before on the show the other day. Who cares? It's not like if you bought your tickets 6 months ago that you're going to get to see the movie any earlier. The movie's opening when it's opening. As long as you can get your tickets more than 1 minute before the film opens, what's the difference? It makes no difference. Up to a few years ago, there was no such thing as advance tickets. Other than, maybe a few days out or something like that. Yes, Thor Ragnarok put their tickets on sale well in advance, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But who cares? What's the problem with putting, I don't know why anybody has an issue or is like, oh, they haven't put out their advance ticket sales yet. That must mean a bad thing. Not necessarily. Look, if there was still a question, remember a few months ago, I was one of the people who had a question. It's like, I wonder if they might move the release date. And I was totally cool if they were going to delay the release date. I think that would have been fine if they did. But if we're no longer talking about, if it's no longer a question, we know they're not moving the release date, then the item of advanced tickets haven't gone on sale yet. Well, then that means nothing. It means nothing. It really doesn't mean a thing. So they're still going to sell the same amount of tickets for opening weekend, whether they put out the advanced tickets 1 week in advance, 3 weeks in advance, or 6 weeks in advance. It's really all comes down to, I really don't see the issue. Anyway, next question. Next question comes to us from Stig100900, who writes, John, when do you think we will get a trailer of some kind or some kind of marketing for Daniel Day-Lewis's new film, The Phantom Thread? Good question. You know what? I was reading a story about Phantom Thread the other day, and I remember that same question went through my head. It's like, we are getting close. We are getting close to when this movie's supposed to come out. Maybe pretty soon. I would hope. I'm going to take a wild guess here. By October. I think by October, we will get a trailer for the new Daniel Day-Lewis movie. At least I hope so. All right, guys, that will do it for me for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, while you're here, don't forget, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Follow me on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. You can see it right here, simply at John Campea. That'll do it for me for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.